The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Outside the Hale estate, thick sheets of water pounded against the glass windows and soaked the cobblestone driveway like the sky itself was mourning. Lightning flashed over the tall pines surrounding the mansion, illuminating the sprawling home that sat like a fortress on the edge of Portland's hills. Inside, the warmth of wealth did little to soothe the storm that had broken between two people who, at some point, had shared the same concern. "She's not just some obligation," Sophie said, her voice shaking.
"She's your doctor, Ethan."
Ethan Hale stood across the granite kitchen island, his black suit rumpled, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who had been carrying his grief for too long, letting it rot inside him. "Don't talk to me like I don't know that," he snapped. "I'm the one who pays for her food, her school, her doctor. I built this life, this house, so she'd never have to feel what I felt growing up." Sophie clenched her jaw, trying to hold herself together. Her soaked raincoat clung to her shoulders. She'd just come back from picking up Lily's asthma medication that Ethan had forgotten to refill again. "She doesn't need a mansion, Ethan," she said, quieter now. "She needs you. She needs a father who listens when she speaks and looks her in the eyes when she says goodnight." Ethan turned away, running a hand through his damp hair. A flash of pain crossed his face, but it vanished, buried beneath years of guilt and corporate polish. "I'm not having this conversation again," he muttered.
"You're overstepping." Sophie stepped closer.
"I've been raising her for almost 2 years. Since Allison died, I've been the one tucking her in, brushing her hair, singing her to sleep. When's the last time you even sat with her for 10 minutes?
"Don't you dare," Ethan growled, spinning to face her. "Don't you dare bring Allison into this."
Sophie didn't flinch. "She's already here. In every room you walk through and ignore.
In every moment you let pass you by."
The silence that followed was louder than the rain. Ethan's breathing turned ragged. Then suddenly, flat and final, "You're fired." Sophie blinked, stunned. "What?"
"You heard me. Pack your things and leave tonight."
"You don't mean that." "I do," he said, turning back to the window. "Just go." Her throat tightened. "And Lily?"
"She's asleep. Don't wake her. Don't confuse her."
"Don't make this harder than it needs to be."
"You want me to just disappear?"
Sophie asked, voice barely audible. "Like I never meant anything to either of you?" He didn't answer. So she did as told. An hour later, Sophie stood at the front door, duffel bag in hand, heart in pieces. The rain was louder now, pounding the roof like a war drum. She hesitated. Maybe he would stop her. Maybe he would realize what he was doing. But the hallway behind her was silent. She opened the door. Behind her, the sound of soft footsteps.
"Sophie."
She turned and saw Lily, barefoot in her pajamas, brown curls sticking to her cheeks. The little girl ran into her arms, hugging her tightly.
"Are you leaving?"
Lily asked, voice trembling. Sophie swallowed hard.
"Just for a drive, sweetheart."
Lily looked up at her with those wide blue eyes.
"Can he come?" Sophie hesitated.
Every part of her screamed no. But her heart, cracked and raw, couldn't bear to let go. "Just for a little while," she whispered. She wrapped Lily in a thick blanket, grabbed her emergency bag from the car, and carried the little girl to the passenger seat. The roads were slick, winding through the forested outskirts of the city. Sophie drove carefully, barely speaking, muttering over and over, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The car's headlights sliced through the darkness as thunder roared above. On a sharp curve near the ridge, her tires skidded. She tried to correct, but the car spun. Metal screeched.
Lily screamed.
And then everything went white.
Silence.
Smoke. Blood. Gasoline. Sophie woke to pain, a sharp, deep ache in her chest. Her head throbbed. The windshield was gone. Rain pelted her face. Her hands trembled as she unbuckled and crawled through the shattered window, cutting her arm on glass. "Lily!" she screamed, crawling across the wet asphalt. "Lily!" The passenger side was twisted, crushed against a tree.
Flame licked the edge of the engine.
Her screams grew louder. "Lily!" Then a shadow approached through the smoke. A man older, wearing a long dark coat and a trucker's cap. His face was half lit by fire. Don't move, he said.
She's inside. Sophie s'obède. Help me, my girl is inside.
She's gone, the man said flatly, holding her shoulders. It exploded. No one made it out of that side. Sophie shook her head violently.
No, no.
But the man didn't argue. He just looked at the wreck, eyes narrowed, then turned away as sirens echoed in the distance. When the paramedics arrived, he was gone. The news came 2 days later, while Sophie lay in the hospital with fractured ribs and smoke damage to her lungs. We found remains, the detective said gently. Too damaged for full ID, but they match the size and age of a young girl.
Sophie screamed. 4 hours, 4 days.
And when she couldn't cry anymore, she whispered one name again and again, until it became a prayer to no one. Lily. She didn't ask who the man was. She didn't wonder why he left. Not yet. That would come later, when the man in the trucker's cap returned, smiling like a devil with a secret, and said 5 words that would unmake her world all over again.
She's not dead, you know.
The rain had passed by the time Sophie was discharged from the hospital. The sun glared too brightly against the white of her bandages, and every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. She walked out of the hospital with a paper bag of medication and nothing else, no child clinging to her side, no warm hand tugging her sleeve. Back at the Hale mansion, Ethan stood before a small coffin. It was white, polished, adorned with lilies. He didn't open it. The coroner had told him the remains were beyond recognition, but consistent with the age of a 7-year-old girl. That was all it took. He placed his hand on the coffin lid, his face hollow, voice breaking.
I should have gone after you.
I should have stopped her.
I should have been there.
When the soil covered the coffin, Ethan Hale, billionaire and widower, was a man with nothing left to fight for. The world whispered about his grief. Some called him a tragic figure. Others said he deserved it, that money couldn't buy love. But no one knew the truth. He had buried more than his daughter. He had buried himself. Sophie didn't attend the funeral. She watched the news from a cheap motel room 2 towns over, her body trembling every time Lily's photo flashed across the screen.
The world sour a monster. The reckless babysitted who killed a child.
Ethan hadn't pressed charges, but whispers spread fast. The only thing louder than the whispers was her guilt. She was packing her few belongings when the knock came at the door.
Marcus Blackwell. The man from the fire.
He leaned against the frame, rain dripping from his cap. His smile was thin, deliberate.
Hello, sweetheart. Sophie froze.
What are you doing here? You owe me, Marcus said casually, stepping inside without waiting. I pulled you out of that wreck. Without me, you'd be ash like the car. Her stomach tightened. Why are you here? Marcus closed the door behind him, lowering his voice. Because I know the truth. And I know the cops are circling. Kidnapping. Negligence.
Manslaughter.
That's what they're saying about you. That's not true. Doesn't matter, he shrugged. What matters is what they believe. And right now, they believe you killed that girl. Sophie's knees buckled. Please, don't.
I'm not here to ruin you.
I'm here to help. I can make you vanish. New name, new town, new life. His smile widened. All it costs is a little gratitude. For weeks, Sophie paid him from what little savings she had. Cash, jewelry, anything she could sell. She lived in shadows, moving from one motel to another, always looking over her shoulder. Marcus knew where to find her every time. And then one night, he said something that froze her blood. You know, I can't stop thinking about that kid.
Cute little girl, brown hair, blue eyes.
Shame her. Sophie went still.
Her voice cracked.
How do you know her eyes? Marcus smirked.
Because she ain't dead.
The room spun. What are you saying? I pulled her out before the fire spread. She was breathing. Weak, but alive. He leaned closer, his breath foul. She's with me. Sophie lunged at him, fists pounding his chest. You bastard. Where is she? Take me to her. He shoved her away with ease. Easy now. You open your mouth, I tell the cops you caused the crash. You'll rot in prison. You want her safe? You keep paying. Tears streamed down her face. Please. Just don't hurt her. Marcus chuckled. Relax. I'm not a monster. She's got food, a roof. What more do you want? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Her father is looking for her. Then let him look, Marcus said coldly. Some people don't deserve to find what they've lost. From that night, Sophie lived two lives. By day, she worked under a false name, washing dishes and waiting tables in diners where no one asked questions. By night, she lay awake in cheap motel beds, haunted by the image of Lily locked away somewhere, calling her name. Every week, Marcus returned for more. He would sit across from her at greasy tables, eating with his hands while she slid money across the surface. And every time, she asked the same question. Is she okay? And every time, he smirked. She's alive. That's all you need to know. But his demands grew. More money, more favors. Sophie sold everything, her jewelry, her car, even her mother's wedding ring. Until she had nothing left. One night, Marcus leaned back in his chair, his voice low. Too hot around here. Cops sniffing. I'll take the girl somewhere safe. Where? Sophie begged. Please just tell me where. He stood, tossing a few crumpled bills on the table like mockery. You'll see her again when I say you can. And then he was gone. Weeks later, police found Marcus's abandoned trailer deep in the woods. It was empty, filthy, reeking of gasoline and mold. In the corner, folded neatly, was a small pink blanket Sophie recognized instantly. Lily's blanket. Sophie collapsed on the floor of her motel room when she heard the news, clutching the blanket to her chest, rocking back and forth. I killed her, she whispered. I killed her. Meanwhile, at the Hale estate, Ethan sat in his daughter's empty room, the toys untouched, the bed neatly made. Every night, he walked past the door and paused, hand hovering over the knob but never opening it. Some nights, he called her name in his sleep. Other nights, he sat in the dark with a glass of bourbon, staring at the small wooden horse she had once played with, the paint chipped, the tail missing. He didn't hire detectives. He didn't chase rumors. The guilt was too heavy, the certainty too final. His daughter was gone. He had buried her. Or so he believed. Far from the mansion, in a small church on the outskirts of Portland, a priest opened the door one rainy evening and found a little girl curled on the steps. Her hair was crudely cut, her skin bruised, her eyes hollow. What's your name, child? The priest asked gently. The girl looked up, lips trembling. Lily. She paused, then shook her head. No. Lila. And just like that, the girl Ethan thought he had buried began a new life under a name not her own, while her father knelt every week at a grave that held nothing but ashes and secrets. The nuns at St. Augustine's gave her the name Lila because it was the only thing the little girl responded to. She'd whispered it once, confused and trembling, when they found her curled on the church steps after a late October storm. She hadn't remembered where she came from. She didn't remember her last name, her birthday, or why loud noises made her flinch. But she remembered the rain. She remembered fire. And a woman's voice screaming her name. The doctors called it trauma-induced amnesia. They said her mind had sealed away the memories that hurt too much to face. They told the nuns to be patient. She might remember one day, the child psychologist had said. Or she might not. Either way, stability is key. So the nuns enrolled her in school under the name Lila Grace. No one questioned the sudden arrival of a quiet girl with deep eyes and a habit of checking every locked door twice. She was one of many. Lila rarely spoke about her past, but every now and then, she would ask questions that felt heavier than a 7-year-old should carry. Do people come back from fire? Can you forget someone you love so much it hurts? Do dead people ever think about the ones who are still alive? The nuns answered as best they could, but Lila always seemed to be searching for something they couldn't give her. She would stare at the sky for hours, watching clouds shift and wondering if someone was out there, doing the same. Her most prized possession was a small drawing she'd made during art class, a silver pocket watch and a wooden toy horse. The teacher had asked what it was. Lila said softly, a dream I had. But it wasn't a dream. Not really. Somewhere in the back of her mind, behind the fog and fear, she remembered the sound of ticking, a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat she had followed through darkness. It had been warm, familiar, safe. The watch had sung to her once. She just didn't know why it mattered anymore. Meanwhile, just miles away, Ethan Hale sat in silence inside the remains of his shattered world. The Hale estate had once buzzed with staff, chefs, chauffeurs, assistants. Now it was just him. He had fired everyone. The halls echoed with quiet. He spent his days investing in things he didn't care about, writing checks he didn't read, attending meetings he never remembered. At night, he sat in Lily's room, still untouched. He kept the door closed during the day, as if afraid the sunlight might steal what little memory remained. His company, Hale Innovations, continued to operate without him. The board respected his grief, or perhaps feared it. His name still carried weight, but his presence was a ghost of what it had been. Each week, without fail, Ethan visited the cemetery. He knelt before the white marble headstone that bore her name. Lili Alejandra Hale. 2015 to 2022. Our brightest light. He brought lilies. Always lilies. And once, a small wooden horse, worn from years of play, chipped at the ears. He set it beside the stone and whispered, "You used to make it fly." He never stayed long. Just enough to whisper something broken and leave before he shattered completely. Lila didn't know any of this. But she felt things. She would sometimes wake from dreams with tears on her cheeks and no memory of what had made her cry. She drew the same face over and over in her sketchbook, a man with tired eyes and a shadowy smile. One afternoon, Sister Marguerite caught her drawing it again. "Who is he, sweetheart?" she asked. "I don't know," Lila replied. "But I think he's waiting for me." A few weeks later, the city announced a public charity event for orphans and underserved youth. It would take place at the Rose Hill Cemetery, of all places, to honor the memory of children who had died in the foster system. The foundation sponsoring the event? The Hale Foundation. The irony was lost on everyone except the man whose name funded it. Ethan hadn't planned to attend. He rarely showed up to anything now. But something pulled at him that morning, a whisper in the back of his mind, quiet and relentless. He arrived late, dressed in black, the silver pocket watch gleaming against his vest. He walked past reporters and board members, ignoring the cameras. His eyes scanned the graves until he reached hers. He knelt. He spoke softly, like he always did. "It's been a year." He laid down fresh lilies and stared at the carved letters. "I keep thinking I'll stop coming. That one day I'll stop hoping." He touched the stone, the chill biting into his skin. "But I can't. Because if I stop, it means I'm saying goodbye." Behind him, a group of children from St. Augustine's walked the gravel path, clutching paper flowers they'd made that morning. One of them lingered behind. Lila. She had paused when she saw the man kneeling in front of a white stone. She couldn't see his face at first. Just his back, hunched, his shoulders trembling slightly. Then she heard it. Tick, tick, tick. The sound from her dreams. From somewhere deep inside, something cracked open. She took a step closer. He shifted slightly, lifting the small wooden horse and placing it gently on the headstone. "You always believed it could fly," he said. "You used to say, if you believe hard enough, it'll take you anywhere." Lila's breath caught. She recognized the toy, the voice, the watch. She stepped behind a tree, heart pounding, paper flower crushed in her fist. Ethan stayed still, silent, lost in a memory he could never rewrite. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered. "I should have come for you that night. I should have fought harder." Lila's legs shook. She wanted to move, to say something. But fear held her in place. What if she was wrong? What if he didn't want her? What if she was just a ghost of a girl he used to know? Her fingers trembled. She turned to leave, but her foot slipped slightly on the damp grass. The faintest sound echoed behind him. Ethan looked up. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the trees. "Hello?" he called gently. Lila froze. He took a step forward. She took a step back. "Are you okay?" he asked, softer now.
She stepped into the light, slowly, uncertain.
Rain began to fall again, gentle this time, more like a sigh. Ethan stared at her.
At first, just a child.
Then, something more. The hair was shorter.
The fasciné.
But the eyes were the same. Lily, he whispered.
Lila blinked.
I'm Lila, she said quietly. But I think I used to be Lily. And just like that, time stopped. Ethan dropped to his knees, the lilies scattering. He couldn't speak. He could only hold his arms out, trembling, as the daughter he thought he'd buried took one hesitant step closer, toward the truth neither of them had ever stopped carrying. Lila stood still, just outside the tree line, soaked from the rain. She was trembling, not just from the cold but from something deeper, something older. A fear that she didn't know how to name. Ethan was still kneeling, arms half outstretched, as if afraid she might disappear if he moved too quickly. His eyes were wide, locked on her face, scanning every inch. The curve of her jaw. The faint scar above her eyebrow. The shape of her nose. He had memorized those features long ago, but grief had dulled the edges of memory. Now, standing before him, the real and the remembered were crashing into each other like waves.
You're alive, he whispered, the word barely holding together.
You're real. Lila looked down at the paper flower in her hand, now soaked and wilting. I didn't think you'd want me, she said, barely audible. Ethan blinked, stunned. What? They told me, people forget, she said. They told me sometimes parents don't come back. He swallowed hard, his voice raw. No. Never. I never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day.
Lila hesitated again.
Then slowly she walked forward, each step deliberate and unsure, like testing ice over a frozen lake. When she finally reached him, she didn't say anything. She just dropped the flower at his side. Then she collapsed into his arms. Ethan caught her, holding her so tightly he could feel her heartbeat against his own. She smelled like rain and earth and something else, something like home. His whole body shook as he pressed his face against her soaked hair. I thought I buried you, he choked. I buried a coffin and told myself it was you. I saw you, she said softly. I was there. I didn't come out. I was scared. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Why? Lila's lip quivered. Because I didn't remember everything. And when I did, I thought maybe you'd already moved on. He shook his head slowly, voice low and certain. I'll never move on from you.
The sky above them wept.
Around them, the event continued quietly. Children placed flowers. Volunteers handed out umbrellas. No one noticed the reunion happening just steps away from the grave of a girl who was no longer dead. It wasn't until a Hale Foundation volunteer noticed Ethan's absence that anyone realized where he had gone. And when someone found him kneeling on the wet grass, holding a trembling little girl, the world shifted. Within an hour, the cemetery was surrounded by media vans and police cruisers. DNA tests were ordered. Pediatric trauma specialists were called. Ethan made no public statement. He simply carried Lila, Lily, into his car and took her home. For the first time in over a year, the lights in the Hale mansion flickered back on. That night, as Lily sat wrapped in a blanket on the living room couch, she stared at the fireplace like it was a portal. Her eyes were heavy, but she couldn't sleep. She was afraid that if she closed her eyes, the mansion would vanish, and she'd be back in that trailer, listening to Marcus's footsteps pacing outside her door.
Ethan sat beside her, silent.
Can I ask something? She said finally. Anything. What happened to her? The woman who took me. He stiffened.
You mean Sophie?
Lily nodded. She cried a lot. Ethan took a breath. I don't know where she is. She vanished after the crash. The police think she might have taken you. She didn't, Lily said quickly. It wasn't her. It was the man. He pulled me out and told her I was gone. Then he took me. Ethan stared at her, shocked.
You remember that?
Not all at once, she whispered. But yes. He nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Then we'll find him. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Ethan got up and opened it to find two detectives, their expressions cautious but urgent. We found the woman, one of them said. Where?
Just au-dessus de Jeanne.
She turned herself in. Later that day, Sophie stood outside the Hale mansion, flanked by two plainclothes officers. Her hands were not cuffed. Her hair was shorter, her clothes cheap. But her eyes, those were the same. Tired.
Haunted.
Ethan opened the door himself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophie whispered, "I didn't know she was alive. He told me she died. I believed him." Ethan's voice was quiet, measured. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I was scared. Of prison. Of you.
Of what you think of me."
"I thought you kidnapped my daughter and killed her," he said coldly. Sophie lowered her gaze. "I know. I would have thought the same."
I buried her, Sophie.
"I buried her too," she whispered.
Every night.
"I saw her in dreams. I thought I'd failed her." Ethan looked at her long and hard. Then he stepped aside. "She wants to see you." In the living room, Lily looked up as Sophie entered. For a long second, neither moved. Then Lily stood. Sophie fell to her knees. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "I thought you were gone. I let him take you. I should have fought harder." Lily walked over slowly and wrapped her arms around Sophie's neck. "It's okay," she said softly. "I know you tried." The moment stretched. Ethan watched from the doorway. Something in his chest loosened.
Not forgiveness.
Not yet. But something close. That evening, after the detectives left and Sophie returned to the guest room under house supervision, Ethan sat in the kitchen, staring at the pocket watch on the counter. Tick, tick, tick. Lily entered, barefoot, dragging her blanket behind her. "Dad," she said. He looked up. "Are we okay now?" He swallowed. "We will be." She nodded, then sat beside him, resting her head against his arm. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. There was still one more visit to make. The next morning, Ethan and Lily returned to Rose Hill Cemetery. The headstone still stood. The name still carved. Lily walked ahead, a bouquet of yellow tulips in her hand. "Do we keep it?" she asked. Ethan stared at the stone. Lili Alethandra Hale. 2015 to 2022. Our brightest light. He knelt beside it and traced the name with his fingers. "We leave it," he said finally. "Why?" "Because it reminds me how close I came to losing you forever." Lily nodded. "Then let's bring flowers. But happy ones." He smiled faintly. "Happy ones," he repeated. "Every time." They walked away hand in hand, the sun finally breaking through the clouds. And behind them, the small wooden horse sat beneath the headstone, no longer mourning a lost child, but marking the place where love proved stronger than death. Lily adjusted the frame of the drawing on her bedroom wall, the one she'd made at St. Augustine's of the silver pocket watch and the little wooden horse. It was the first thing she'd asked to bring home from the orphanage. Her room now looked almost like it had before. Pastel walls, stuffed animals lined up on the shelf, the same comforter she used to wrap herself in as a toddler. But nothing was exactly the same. The bed felt bigger. The walls quieter. Even the toys seemed like ghosts of a childhood she had lost and only partially found again. In the hallway, Ethan paused at her door, watching her for a moment before knocking softly. She turned. "That." "Hey, sweetheart. Mind if I come in?" She nodded, and he stepped inside, taking a seat on the floor beside her. "School's starting next week," he said. Lily made a face. "Do I have to?" "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." She hesitated. "What if they ask questions? What if I don't know what to say?" Ethan looked at her, thoughtful. "Then you tell them the truth. Or at least, the part you're comfortable sharing. You don't owe anyone your pain." She sat down beside him. "Do you think I'm different now?" "Different from what?" "From who I used to be. From the girl in the pictures." Ethan reached for one of the photos on her nightstand. Lily, age 4, smiling in a Halloween costume, her mother standing behind her. He held it up. "She was loved. So are you. That part didn't change." Lily smiled faintly, but her eyes wandered to the window. "Do you think about her, Sophie?" He nodded. "A lot." "Are you still mad?" He paused before answering. "Not like before. I was furious. I thought she took you away from me. I thought she ran because she didn't care. And now I know better." She was scared. She was manipulated. She didn't do the right thing, but she didn't do nothing either. She didn't tell you I was alive. No, she didn't, he admitted. But she also didn't leave you in that car. She took you with her. She cared. Maybe too much, and in the wrong way. Lily was quiet for a long time. I don't hate her. I'm glad, Ethan said. Hate's heavy. It gets in your bones and stays there. That afternoon, Sophie sat at the kitchen table, turning a ceramic mug in slow circles. She'd been allowed to stay under supervision while the police decided what to do. Her confession, combined with Lily's testimony and Marcus's now-dead record, had painted a complicated picture, one where guilt and innocence weren't so easily separated. Ethan entered the kitchen, watching her for a moment before speaking. She wants to see you. Sophie looked up, startled. She does. She asked about you this morning. Sophie nodded slowly. How is she? She's healing, he said. Kids are better at that than we are. Sophie stood, her hands shaking slightly. I don't expect anything. I just want to tell her I'm sorry. That's all. In the living room, Lily was seated on the couch, clutching the same blanket she'd arrived in months ago. When Sophie entered, she stood immediately. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Lily walked forward and took Sophie's hand. You were crying a lot, she said. Sophie nodded. I still do sometimes. I remember the trailer, Lily said. And I remember you trying to protect me. Even when he was yelling. Sophie's eyes filled. I failed you. No, Lily said. You didn't leave. They sat together, quiet and still, while outside the wind shifted in the trees. Later that evening, Ethan sat at his desk, reading over the final police report. Marcus Blackwell was officially declared missing, presumed dead. His trailer had burned down shortly after being searched, most likely arson. Whatever secrets he had taken, they were buried now. The district attorney had decided not to pursue charges against Sophie. Her cooperation, mental health reports, and Lily's own defense of her had swayed the decision. It was over. At least on paper. But healing wasn't something that arrived with a verdict. That night, Ethan found Lily in the garden behind the house. She was standing by the rose bushes, staring up at the stars. He walked over, hands in his pockets. Couldn't sleep. She shook her head. Too many thoughts. Want to talk about them? I was thinking about the grave, she said. And how weird it is. That I have a grave. Ethan sat down on the stone bench nearby. Yeah. It's strange. I used to wonder if you were on the other side of it, she said. Like. I was buried and you were visiting, but there was a wall between us. He swallowed. I think it felt like that for me too. They were silent for a moment. Do you think we should leave it? She asked. The headstone. Ethan looked up at the stars, then at his daughter. Ida. Why? Because it's not just a grave. It's a reminder, he said. Of what I almost lost. Of what I need to hold on to now. Lily nodded, as if that made perfect sense. I want to add something, she said. What's that? She pulled something from her pocket. A small piece of paper folded carefully. She handed it to him. Ethan unfolded it. It was a drawing, a new one. The wooden horse, the silver watch, and two figures holding hands under the rain. Above them, in crayon handwriting, were the words, I came home. Ethan's throat tightened. Can we put this by the stone? She asked. He nodded, too moved to speak. Days later, father and daughter stood together at Rose Hill Cemetery. The headstone was the same. But now beneath it, in a plastic weatherproof frame, sat Lily's drawing. A quiet testament not to death, but to return. As they turned to leave, Lily looked up at Ethan. Do you think people can really come back? From being lost? Ethan considered the question. I think the ones who want to be found, eventually are. And with that they walked away, hand in hand, the wind behind them calm for the first time in a long while. Behind them, the headstone stood still. But this time, it didn't mark the end of a story. It marked a beginning. The story of a girl who returned. And a father who never stopped waiting.